Well, welcome to the Dress Rehearsal. Speaking of having no sense of human, it's the disembodied voice. What can I say? I missed you guys. Today I want to talk to AP Seminar Season 4 about some of the lessons we learned in Seasons 1, 2, and 3. And then I'll talk about how Season 4 and beyond can earn the best ratings yet. During the summer before Season 1, Mr. Hauser and I tromped off to Philadelphia for a week-long AP Teacher Institute. We did sneak in a visit to the Philadelphia Art Museum one evening, you'll be pleased to know. Anyway, our instructor strongly encouraged us, before we let our students embark on their first performance task, to take you through a trial run of the individual research reports and group oral presentation. We renamed this trial run the Dress Rehearsal, mostly because we just like the name better. And since we are coordinating this class with AP World History, your next period class, we also decided to require our dress rehearsal groups to explore a topic in world history. We left it up to students to decide what question they wanted to research. And that turned out to be a mistake. What we discovered, and what we really should have anticipated, is that most of our students did not have much experience with finding or exploring a historical argument. When students had undertaken research in the past, if they had undertaken any research in the past, they'd written reports. And sure enough, too many of the Season 1 dress rehearsal presentations turned out to be reports on a historical event, rather than an exploration of a historical controversy. Season 1 students didn't realize, which means we did not adequately explain, that they needed to explore an area that had sparked genuine disagreement among historians. They needed to find a fight, and that became our class slogan. We also discovered that students had trouble figuring out which sources met the College Board standard for scholarly research, and they had trouble finding these sources. We saw way too much research from History.com and similar sites. Again, this was a teacher as well as a student failure. These lessons did not come entirely too late. By the time they got to our first real deal performance task, our Season 1 students had found some great fights, and you saw one just a few days ago. Still, we resolved to do better. So starting with Season 2, we gave our dress rehearsal groups a choice of questions that we knew historians hotly debated. Most of these topics we took from a history textbook series entitled Taking Sides. And yes, Season 2 went a lot more smoothly, but we learned a few more lessons. One was that many students dove right into the annotated bibliography assignment without first acquiring general and shared background on their topic. That's why we now have groups watch an introductory topic video, fill out a study guide, and take a quiz on your topic. Right after you watch your topic video, you will tackle introductory topic readings. These readings are up on Moodle, along with a file of starter scholarly articles and books available in PDF form. Also, be sure to check out the books on Mr. Hauser's bookshelf. We've ordered lots of books on the topics. You won't be able to complete your individual research reports from the resources we posted on Moodle alone. But these articles and books, and even more the articles and books that they cite, will save you a lot of time as you seek out further information. They'll also give you an idea of the kind of sources you'll need for your annotated bibliographies and your individual research reports. The quality of your evidence is a big part of the College Board rubric for both performance tasks. I'll talk more about the annotated bibliography in a follow-up lecture. So, each student will read one of the 3 or 4 introductory topic articles. Make sure you decide how you're going to divide these up. Groups of 3 should read and analyze the first 3 introductory readings. Groups of 4, all 4, in other words, 1 per group member. As you read, think about how your assigned author answers the basic question your group is exploring. What's the author's thesis? What are the author's major claims and evidence? These questions should sound real familiar by now. Some of you will have longer articles. It is okay to skim, but skim intelligently. Don't just seize on the first claims or evidence because they show up in the first few pages. Skim through the entire article, watching for information that would really help your group. Decide on your resolution to the question and support your resolution to the question. And then read those sections more carefully. And finally, this is really important. Start thinking about which lenses or general research categories your group might choose to explore. Is there a major economic component to the question? Military, artistic, feminist? So here's the argument analysis template you will use to analyze each claim. It should look familiar from your argument analysis essay prep. You'll be writing this up in a Google Doc so that your other group members and your teachers can see your work, and so that you can use this analysis down the line to help you write your annotated bibliographies and papers. And to anticipate a question, we are usually asked, yes, this can count as one of the 4 sources in your annotated bibliography, but only if it turns out to be truly relevant to your lens. Your individual article analysis is due at 8 a.m. on day 4. During class that day, you're going to meet in your groups to share what you learned from your introductory readings and map out a plan for exploring 3 to 4 lenses or research categories, 1 per group member. These research categories may well change as your project progresses, but for now, you need to divide up the work and get started. As you work on this group document, begin to identify also where you need to do further research. And now we get to another lesson learned the hard way in Season 2, and a problem that frankly persisted in Season 3. Some groups are not very careful about dividing up their research or choosing separate lenses or research categories. They choose lenses so vague and general, socioeconomic is a common culprit, that students in the same group ended up reading the same articles and researching and writing up the same claims for their annotated bibliographies. One reason this happened is groups did not talk about what they were learning to each other. They didn't share information as they did their research. And let's be honest here, sometimes students left their research the night before the first annotated bibliography was due. Not a good idea, and that made it a lot harder to share information with group members. Keep in mind that Google Drive is your friend and it's your adversary. Drive makes it easy to share, view, and discuss each other's research. You don't have to be on the phone all the time. But because Drive entries are time-stamped and because we can pull up earlier versions, teachers can find out from Drive who worked steadily on their annotated bibliography and who put it off until 3 a.m. the night before it was due. To make the same point more positively, you can make this project a lot more fun and save yourselves a lot of time and effort if you talk frequently with each other about what you're learning. What's your research telling you about how your group should ultimately answer or resolve the question? Should you rethink your lenses? How are you dividing up your research? Is there an obvious hole in your group's research, information you're going to need when you present your final resolution? How can you fill that hole, and who's going to do it? Another lesson we learned in Seasons 1 and 2 is that students need to think more carefully about what kind of question they're answering and the requirements that this particular kind of question poses. So here are 4 questions from our topic list, all of which fit into the general category of definitional questions. To answer each of these questions, you first have to think about how you are defining some key terms. So, what does it mean for a society to be patriarchal? What qualities does it need to have? What is a social revolution, and how does this differ from, say, a merely political revolution? What makes a general great? Is it winning battles, winning wars, coming up with a brilliant strategy, inspiring the troops? At what point are changes in sexual mores significant enough to be termed a revolution? What do we mean by revolution? And to introduce another category of question, did the Industrial Revolution actually cause these changes? There are a lot of good ways to answer these questions, but your group really needs to decide how you will define critical terms. So the third introductory reading for these groups is a definitional reading, and talk about it together. Many of you, I predict, will pick problem-solution current events questions for the Real Deal group presentation that you'll start in December. Since history questions deal with past events rather than current or future policy, problem-solution questions are less likely to arise in the dress rehearsal. By the way, you're welcome to pursue a history topic for the first Real Deal, and many of our top scoring students in the past did just that. However, here are 2 topics that could, and in my opinion, should be approached as at least a modified problem-solution question. Take the second of these topics. The problem is pretty straightforward. World population was, and still is, outstripping food supplies. The Green Revolution of the 1950s, 60s, and 70s introduced new seed hybrids, new fertilizers, and new cultivation techniques. Food supplies in most places that embraced the Green Revolution expanded. But these countries also incurred some significant social and environmental costs. While the historical questions asked whether those benefits exceeded the costs, I think a good presentation would also present possible solutions. Are there ways that the gains of the Green Revolution could be preserved at a lower social and environmental cost? Similarly, a group tackling the Rwandan question should really think about practical problems the U.S. would have needed to overcome if the government had chosen to intervene in Rwanda, and steps it will need to take if it's going to intervene to stop similar tragedies in the future. So finally we get to the most common and alas most problematic category of history questions, the cause-effect question. Cause-effect reasoning is one of the categories of historical reasoning you'll be tested on in AP World History, and no wonder. What caused agriculture to emerge? What caused the Roman Empire to fall? What caused the U.S. to fall in the Civil War? These are the staples of history classes, and they're the bread and butter of academic historians. And we have a lot of cause and effect questions on our topics list. This year, we've rewritten several of these questions. You'll see the Season 2 and 3 versions on top and our Season 4 rewrite on the bottom. As I've already mentioned, we took most of our topics from a series called Taking Sides, which introduces students to opposing viewpoints on historical questions. This summer, talking over lessons learned, we decided to make these questions less leading and more open-ended, more like the questions good historians actually answer. But there is a very significant risk here. The danger of cause-effect questions as you end up assembling a Frankenstein answer from your different lenses. So, say you're examining the causes of Mayan collapse. You could present a laundry list of possible causes: war from the military list, drought from the environmental lens, political fragmentation from the political lens, even blood sacrifice from the artistic lens. It's fine to acknowledge that most historical changes have multiple causes, but to provide a clear resolution to your question, you need to prioritize causes. Is one of them most important? And you need to talk about how they are interrelated. So, for example, did drought-induced scarcity encourage warring raids on neighboring city-states? Or did the demands of warfare perhaps encourage overuse of scarce resources, causing environmental damage? We don't want a presentation with lenses awkwardly stitched together with a lot of thick black thread showing. So here are some questions your group should be asking as you explore cause-effect questions, or really, for that matter, any of your questions. Above all, and this again goes for everybody, resist the temptation to answer all the above, drawn from your lenses, without any prioritizing or discussion of the interrelationships between different factors. Or, for that matter, resist the temptation to waffle on your resolution. Take a position, defend it. Well, that's probably about as much useful information as you can absorb in one sitting, and quite possibly too much useful advice. But the disembodied voice is not shutting up until I talk about one last problem that Mr. Hauser and I observe in every AP seminar season. I used to teach the sunk cost fallacy in economics, and Mr. Hauser teaches it now. Students fall into a sunk cost trap when they have invested so much time and effort in a particular lens or argument or resolution that they think they have to keep moving in that same direction. In other words, when they aren't willing to rethink their resolution or their approach, or to tackle more work, even if the evidence is mounting that that's something they need to do. One way to avoid the sunk cost trap is to try not to get locked into a resolution too early. Keep an open mind about the way your group will answer the question, even about the lenses you will ultimately present. Believe it or not, you learn a lot even from taking a wrong direction, but you can get into big trouble if you aren't willing to turn around and cut some losses. So, good luck with the dress rehearsal, gang, or, as the superstitiously say in the theater world, break a leg. Work on your assignments steadily, in small bites, not choking mouthfuls. Talk to each other in person and online. Ask for help from your group members and from your teachers. Don't just paddle around in the shallow end. Dive deeper into your topics and try to remember you are acquiring skills that will help you succeed on the real deal performance tasks in college and, above all, in life.